So let's introduce one more tool called gradients and fills. So this is a tool you can use in Photoshop that is not necessarily purely drawing like the brush tool is, but you can use this to very quickly fill space with color and add effects and quickly change line art color. So we will get into that. This is still the same file that I've been working on, and we're going to add some fills and gradients to it. You can see in the last video that I merged the rabbit file layer into one, because the rabbit is going to stay a white rabbit, but I left the clouds, the tree, the apple, all unmerged. So the only things that are merged are the grass and the rabbit. So let's actually very quickly, by clicking the eyeball on the left side of each group that I made in between these videos, I'm going to hide the rabbits, hide the clouds, hide the fruit, tree. Actually, I'm not going to hide that. I'm going to hide the tree layer, the tree underlayer, and now I just have grass. Since I have merged the grass layer, the black drawing of the edge of the grass, and then this green fill layer, I'm going to experiment with the fill. So the paint bucket, I have this habit of calling it the fill bucket because that is what it does. It fills, as you can see, similarly colored contiguous areas. So that means areas that are similar enough in pixel color to be considered the same color, and the paint bucket will fill that layer. So clicking on that bucket, you can also hit G as your hotkey. I now have this little paint bucket, and what the paint bucket does is it takes your foreground color. So down in this color picker, you can see there's two squares. The front one is black, the back one is white. So I'm actually going to change the color that we fill this grass, and I'm going to use this eyedropper. So once I click the color picker, the eyedropper will immediately appear up anytime you move the mouse outside of that box. So now I can actually click on my image with the color picker open, and it will detect the color that I'm clicking on. And since this is all one solid color, it is just clicking green. But if I get close and I click, I'm actually going to zoom in. One other hotkey I would say is my most used is the zoom in and zoom out. So zoom in is Command and plus sign. So I'm holding down Command and clicking the plus, and zoom out is Command minus. So what I'll do is I'll keep my thumb on the command, and then I will just move my index finger to the minus. So I can move the index finger between the minus and plus and sort of toggle that infinitely. So let's, oh, and the hand tool, I should say. Right now I'm holding the space bar. So you can see the eyedropper actually turns into this little hand, and as long as I hold that space bar, any tool that I have will turn into this little hand tool. And what you can do is when you have the hand active is you can click and drag. So this is something that will move you around your image without having to go down to either of these bars on the bottom or the sides and move them. I'm actually going to move closer to a big black space and click the black pixel. So now I have black as my color, but I'm going to click green, and I'm going to make it more of a limey, yellowy green. You can, if you want to be very specific, use the RGB color info here, or the hexagonal color code right here. If you have a very specific color that you want to use, you can enter the 6-digit code right there. But we're just messing around. Very limey, yellowy green. So now I have the color I want in the foreground section, and I'm just going to click on my green area because that's the area I want to fill. So there we go. Much more yellow, a little duller actually. So I filled that, and you'll see that even though the grass is actually two different layers merged together, when I clicked, because the black is different enough from the green that I was filling, it was smart enough to say, we're filling just green pixels, black pixels will be left as they are. So if I actually change my color once again to something very similar, in a very similar sort of tonal range to this color, but maybe a little bit darker. And then I go in and I click this individual black line. It will actually fill that set of black pixels. And because they are not connected, they are not contiguous to these other black lines, those other lines will not fill. One thing to notice about fill is that it's not perfect. You can see that there's these little pixels along the edge that were not fully black. They're a little bit gray. So when I clicked, the fill said those are different enough. We're not going to fill them. But now if I click again, it's going to give me a little bit of a fuzzier line, but it's going to fill that more thoroughly. What I want to do is I want to add a beautiful blue sky behind all of my items, or all of my layers at this moment. So I've just clicked background, and I'm going to go down to the very bottom of my layers menu on the right, and I'm hovering over a little half and half circle that says create new fill or adjustment layer. So here you can also add a solid color or fill layer beneath. So if I wanted to do just a single color for a background sky, I could go here, select solid color, and right above the layer that I had selected, it will insert a new layer that maybe you haven't seen before, but this is called a color fill layer. And what's great about this color fill layer, instead of filling with your paint bucket, is that right now I am actually seeing a live preview of all the different colors possible. So let's just do kind of a middle of the road blue. So now I have sort of a standard, elementary coloring book blue. And what you can do is actually you can come back to this because this layer has a color picker inserted in it. You can double click this and you can come back and change it again. So this becomes a non-destructive way to keep altering something. Very useful. So I'm actually going to make it, I'm going to click this green to sort of keep it in that color family. And I'm actually just going to alter the color space that we're in and make it this light blue. So now this color layer is below everything. And you can see because of that, layers above it, if they're not totally filled in, say to your line art, that you're going to see the fill layer through all of them. Now, if you want to add gradients, I would say use them sparingly. They're they're very cool, they're very flashy, so you don't want to overuse them and make every single thing a gradient, but they can be super useful to know about early on. So I'm going to go back to the same make adjustment or fill layer down here, the half black, half white little circle, sort of a half moon. And I'm going to go to gradient, which is right below solid color. And now I have something called the gradient fill box. And you can see right now it just populated with two things. And those things that it populated with are my foreground and background color. So immediately it said, let's just take your foreground, your background, and make that a gradient. And you can go in here and you can tweak the style from linear as it currently is to sort of, weirder things like a diamond in the middle. So let's not go into that just yet. Let's go back to linear because we'll change the angle so you can make it shift from one quadrant to the other. So what's great about Photoshop, it has a lot of preset things you can use. You can also always make your own presets, but let's start with blues. And now you can see that there's this menu of preset blues to pick from. Let's try something more like this. Okay. So it's a different effect than just the straight fill. And I think I will stick to that. So another way to use your fill or paint bucket is to make shapes that you can fill yourself. And very quickly, using my spacebar and my pen to move around with the hand tool, I'm going to go to the tree. And I see that I have this one set of colors called tree under. I'm going to actually make another layer. Call it tree green. These names do not have to be perfectly legible to everyone. In most cases, you're the only one who's going to be reading these names, so just make them make sense for you. This is usually how I do it. So I'm going to take the eyedropper, which is the eye key. I've done this so instinctually with the hotkey that it's hard to find these sometimes. So the eyedropper tool, click this green here, and I'm going to open up my color picker, and I'm going to make something slightly lighter and brighter. Right about there. So now with using a fill and a brush tool, what you want to do is you want to make a brush tool that is pretty solid. Still stick with your tapered edges here, but I would say solid is better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make really quickly a line of color to sort of box in the shape. Alright, so that seems pretty connected. It's not totally perfect, but this will do for our purposes. So now I have a shape that I believe, because I followed the sort of black line art outline of the tree leaves, I think it's a solid green shape that I could fill, but to be sure, I'm actually going to hide the other layers. Now we can see this green shape on my gradient, and to me, at first glance, it seems like all of the green is closed. Oh, I can see it. There's a hole there and a hole here. So the important thing about this is that, remember, a fill bucket is contiguous. So really the pixels that I'll be clicking, if I take my paint bucket, click G for hotkey, if I click in this area here, it's not actually clicking these blue pixels, because these blue pixels are actually on the layer below, the gradient fill, and I am in the green, the tree green layer here. So really there are no pixels around the green ones currently. So if I click to fill, hopefully I've made everything closed. I did. So now, if we look at this layer isolated by itself, you can see that there is only green or transparent or non-pixels. The thing with fill, it's very useful to fill large areas, but it'll do a little thing where it leaves this sort of halo effect between the line you drew and your fill. Now, if you want to work quickly, what you can do is you can take your paint bucket and you can click again to sort of overfill. And now those lines have disappeared. There's still a few areas that I would just touch up with the brush, but overall it's pretty full. It's well filled with color. I'm going to bring back my other layers. So one last thing I'll show you guys is if you don't fully close your shape that you want to fill with the paint bucket, that it will just fill everything. So I'm going to go to Clouds under, add a new Clouds white layer, and put it beneath by pulling and dragging it. I'm going to quickly show you what happens when you don't fill completely. So I'm just going to very roughly outline this and then just sort of forget to go all the way to the edge. And then I'm going to click G for paint fill bucket and fill. So now everything is white. So the white layer here has filled completely, basically, and everything below it is covered. So yeah, that is the very basics of fill and gradient. We'll get into more specifics later, but this is what you need to sort of get by with those tools.